Welcome. My name is Claire Foster, and I am the events coordinator here at Type Books in Toronto. And I'm so happy to welcome you to the virtual launch of Fast Commute by Laurie D. Graham, which was recently published by McClelland and Stewart. This evening, Laurie will be joined in readings and conversation by Sheri Benning, whose most recent book, Field Requiem, is also available at Type Books. This event I know has many people tuning in from all over, but I want to let everyone know that Type Books is an independent bookstore in Toronto, Canada. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that Type Books, where we are selling this book, is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and we encourage you to reflect on the history of the land from which you are listening and tuning in as well. Finally, I'll clarify that this is a webinar, which means that while you can see us, we can, alas, not see you. So feel free to put in any questions you have in the Q&A bar down below at the bottom of the screen, or comment in the chat throughout. That's always fun to read. And we'll do our best to get to all of the questions and comments before the end of the event. And shortly, I'll be putting in links to buy the books in the chat as well. Laurie D. Graham is a writer and editor and the publisher of Brick magazine. She grew up in Treaty 6 territory outside of Edmonton, and she currently lives in Nguoji-Nawong, also known as Peterborough, Ontario, in the territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. Laurie is descended from homesteaders who came from Ukraine, Poland, and Northern Ireland and Scotland about a century ago to farm in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Her previous books are Rove and Settler Education. And Sheri Benning grew up on a family farm in the rural municipality of Wolverine Creek on Treaty 6 territory. Her most recent collection of poetry, Field Requiem, was published by Carcanet Press in fall 2021. Previous collections of hers include The Season's Vagrant Light, New and Selected Poems, Thin Moon Psalm, and Earth After Rain. And I'm now happy, I think, Sheri is going to begin with a reading, and I will come back at the very end of the event to communicate all of your questions. And until then, I'm going to leave it to the main act. So thanks to you both for joining, and congratulations, and hope everyone enjoys the event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Claire, for that introduction, and thank you, Laurie, for this beautiful book, which I'm delighted to be the opening act for tonight. I grew up on a family farm in rural Saskatchewan, and my family came here in the early 1900s from what's now southeastern Ukraine, having been pitched around Prussia by war and empire, and they moved to Saskatchewan to escape that very thing. What wasn't acknowledged while I was growing up was how we farmed in the barely cleared smoke of war in Saskatchewan, and in a land where forced dispossession took place. So the poems in Field Requiem constitute my effort at a kind of intentional mourning for the ecocide perpetrated by agribusiness, but also the violence that adheres to the region's colonialist legacy. The first poem I'm going to read is called Minor Doxology. Circle of light on the village street, from his kitchen window where he stands in the slowing breath of nightfall, stares through that cold fire into sifting shadow. Dusk blue snow banked against the porch, and beyond the row of houses, evergreens in daguerreotype darkening on winter fields. The galvanized taste of chores rises in his mouth, well water, dander, frost, and straw. And because place calls to place inside us, he is 70 in the kitchen, even as he is 12 in the farmyard, midway between house and barn, metal pail of new milk, quarter moon, spilled oats, early stars. Another thing that the book does is traces it traces some matrilineal ancestors of the baby, name lost, 1906, spring-born, almond and blackthorn in bloom, meadowsweet, chickweed, petals of milk on her lips, spider silk saliva from mouth to crabapple fists, on mother's lap, the train from Kiev to Minsk after the last harvest in Tiganort. Teething, feverish, pin-pricked cheeks, mother sings knee writer to distract. Bouncing, bouncing baby, should you fall in the ditch, ravens will feast, ravens will feast. Bitter pip of sick picked up in Riga's quarantine. Soon they will slip her little body into the Baltic, wrapped in blue duponi cut from mother's wedding dress. But now she conducts with waving fists. Skeins of dawn mist lift from feathergrass and knapweed by the tracks. Mother's soft breath in the cradle of the train car. Bouncing, bouncing baby, should you fall in the sea, should you fall in the sea. Ravens perch in witch's broom of passing oak and silver fir. Of the swineherd on the Sovkhoz, Arkhangelsk Oblast, who steals handfuls of corn meant for hogs, who forages the Soyana's ravine for nettles, sorrel, bare onion, club moss, who at night spoon feeds her fevered sister earthen broth, bunk window, cataract with steam. Of the fevered sister who dreams their father stands up from where he was shot. Kulak, the commissar barked. Run to the house, father says in the dream, dusting chaff from his coat. Tell mama I'll be in for supper soon. Bloom of blood, his burst heart furls back into bud. Of Oma who sings, if I had 1,000 hearts, I'd give them all to you. After they open the cattle cars, give spades to the men to bury their dead by the tracks. Stop, a man sobs, stop singing at once. Oma's voice, Maria Zutleben, murmuration of Black Sea starlings, waves of wings, dusk bronzed. Of the swineherd who holds her sister in Arctic owl light, a shawl of faint stars, listens to white sea wind. When I die, Oma said in the dark car, don't be sad. It means I found a way to trick Stalin. Cracked lips against Velis, she whispers Oma's song in her sister's ear. If flesh and hell battle, you are my shelter. Of Mama in her daughter's typhoid dream. Look at this mess. She must tidy up, unknots the tablecloth, loaves back in the cupboard, sweeps shards of china into the corner. She tongue clucks her youngest hiding on the porch. Your red apple cheeks. She breathes the clove of her girl's unwashed hair, reties her scarf. There, you can't stay here. We are dead. Then she pushes her out, leans all her weight against the door. The next poem I'm going to read is an excerpt from a long poem called Let Them Rest. The poem visits the detritus of the abandoned farmyards and schools and churches and community halls that populate rural Saskatchewan, depopulation resultant from the rapid shift to agribiz. Psalm 130. Chemical burn-off after frost, cocklebur, clubroot spores, flicksweed, lamb's quarters, Liberty Link patent fees, canola seed treated for flea beetles, long trail for dandelion and thistle. At night, the wives sit, shoulders hunched at kitchen tables, divine profit margins with calculators and lines of credit from Wells Fargo. If south winds don't blow in waves of diamondback moths, if winter kills the pupa of Bertha armyworms, if sun, if rain, if crop insurance premium rates, if 25 bushels an acre to pay input costs, At night, the wives wait. They count their bones as the moon pours out. Northeast 10, 36, 22, west of 2nd. Canola, pulse, cereal, flax. The field northwest of the yard site, past the shelter belt of unshaved evergreens, caraganas and buffalo beans growing through rusted machinery, grain cart and auger, pull-type swather circa 1984. Canola, pulse, cereal, flax, brushed nap of stubble, GPS tracked, factory stamped seed rows, clots of soil, desiccated scabs, claw marks from the heavy harrow spreading last season's trash, straw, chaff. Canola, pulse, cereal, flax, Roundup, anhydrous ammonia, nitrogen gas, granular phosphorus, sulfur, potash, 120 pounds per acre of wheat seed, broadleaf herbicide, fungicide, insecticide, glyphosate-resistant ragweed in low spots and sloughs, contagion of snow geese, their many-throated scream, a terrible forgetting. This is where the boy felt the animal's wet-eyed stare, coyote, fox, jackrabbit, badger. This is where he followed tracks, set snares in estrus scent and molt, scat, shed fur. This is where he lay, a deer's wallow of slender wheatgrass, bluegrass, brome and sedge, watched catkins lift in updrafts, soft rattle of aspens, dozed in the heavy breath of bloom, balsam, wolf willow, chokecherries, saskatoons. This is where he came in sorrow after his father made him shoot the horned owl perched in the spruce north of the chicken coop. No proof the owl killed chicks. Now, this is where the man, neck in the noose of profit margins and farm credit, runs the roam plow, the bush disc, clears scrub, rakes roots for 40 more acres to seed next spring. The owl's wingspan, at least 5 feet, though it weighed no more than what he could hold in his 10-year-old palms, all feathers and fluff, shadow and light. After dusk, this is where the man watches the piled bush burn, remembers the owl's yellow eyes, hiss and snap of heat, sap, leaves, hank of dew, osteoache, the shrinking moon. It's true what they say. We were warned. Everything will be swept away, everything consumed. Winter killed perch, walleye, pike, white bellies, slack flags, thousands washed ashore at Stony Lake, fertilizer runoff, nitrogen, phosphorus, blue-green algae bloom. It's true, we were warned. Everything swept away, everything consumed, sky bled dry of midges, locusts, bees, neurons frayed, antiseptic silence of canola fields at dusk, muted grasshopper thrum. Our blood poured out like dust. Swept away, consumed, empty barn swallow nests in rafters and eaves, the western meadowlark's throat, an open grave, neonic-coated soybean, canola, sunflower, wheat, white-crowned sparrows, migration delayed, anorexic, compass lost, a land possessed of nettles and salt. Ferruginous hawk, black-tailed prairie dog, bobolink, longspurs, pipits, swift fox, whippoorwill, piping plover, whooping crane, sage grouse. We were warned. Fish, fowl, animal. And they who weigh silver, merchants and traders. Great Plains auctions. With food in our throats, we asked for more. With food in our mouths, we still asked for more. There was meat and bread, but our craving unslaked. Fat gardens, braids of onion, bled heifers and pigs, skinned, scalded, scraped. Sure, we were sad to see our neighbors go, bid extra on their socket sets, air compressors, leftover 5-gallon pails of hydraulic oil, sold, the auctioneer's speakers rattled in his truck bed. We told ourselves if they could, they'd do the same. Frost out of the ground, we poured red froth, Vitamax, into our auger boxes of churning seed to stop stinking smut, C. sativus, root rot, soil-borne disease. Old St. Benedict Church, rural municipality of Hoodoo. Where beeswax, chrism, myrrh, where teething babies on mother laps pulled and sucked fistfuls of faux pearl, where we held out our tongues for bread, where dust circled in stained light, where cradles, where coffins, where holy water rained. Black mold climbs the walls, trapped breath of petitions, a choir of shorthorn grasshoppers, a choir of katydids, a choir of wind. The cantor sings, let me begin again. This was our new heaven. This was our new earth where our former homes were forgotten. Outside, a taxic mule deer stutter between mossed and dated stones, our bones in the loam womb, the dirt of our new Jerusalem. Northwest 1836-22 west of 2nd. Gather in the summer fallowed south field, winter stiff furrows, no moon, no snow, overcast, hold hands. Farm subsidies smashed by intercontinental packers, big sky pork farms. Our barns now their finishing pens for 10,000 pigs from 1,000 sows. No moon, no snow, no yard lights for miles, like an eye put out. Hold hands. We are but breath, but chaff, what passes and does not come again. The parish of St. Scholastica erected this monument in memory of those buried here in 1976. St. Scholastica's fall supper, 6 feet deep in the earth. Sod ceiling drips pesticide leach, bones laced with malathion, 2,4-D, turnip smell of canola and stinkweed, wild oats and kosher roots tangled in hair. Don't mention the cutworms that chew dresses and best denims. Parishioners, we paid our fees to feast, tossed 30 pieces on the temple floor. The Dominion Lands Act, 1872, proved up on our field of blood, 160 acres of oxbow sandy loam. Cheekbones and mandibles gleam. Mothers give toddlers drumsticks to gnaw, cartilage and marrow. Don't mention the bread was salted with tears. Don't mention the bowlfuls and bowlfuls of tears. Parishioners, push back your chairs, bring out the accordion, waltz and polka, turn and turn. Your bones knit rich dirt. Sated babies snooze on half moons of mother shoulders. Don't mention the tremble, the 700 horsepower John Deere overhead, the tank tread, the stretching bellows, the thickening drone. My ghost waits for me here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheri. That was beautiful. Yes, clap, clap, clap. This is her book. Make sure you go get it. Thank you, Sheri, for that. And thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Type and Claire, for hosting this event tonight. I'm going to read, I'm going to start from the beginning. This is Fast Commute is a book-length poem. I'm going to start from the top. And I'm doing something somewhat similar to what Sheri was talking about in her introduction and what she is writing about in Field Requiem, connecting the forced dispossession that allowed settlerdom on this continent with, in my case, and in the case of this book, with the 401, with sprawl and ecocide. So a lot of this book is kind of just watching, looking out a lot of windows on trips and on buses and on trains, and it's doing a lot of walking besides water bodies. And so that's kind of the general rhythm of this long poem. It starts, and it's a form I return to at various points in the book, with what I think of as a bit of a akin to a Twitter feed in a way, vignettes, brief vignettes with spaces in between them, and the images, the idea being that those images can accrue into something larger. So I'll start from the top. Fast commute. Banner, King Street, North Battleford, Saskatchewan, 1913. We're young, but we're ambitious. A foal flat on her side receiving a brand, while two other horses carrying the men who keep the ropes around her legs taut recoil. A boy under thin-brimmed hat scrabbling up corral logs, his face full with all that will one day be subject to his iron. Rawhide postcard, Moose Jaw, Canada, and a cowboy with a gun, addressed to Ben Crowther, Bradford, England, no missive. Aspen Russell, always Aspen Russell, always Saskatoon, belonging to the rose, they write, related to the apple. I memorized Missisquattamin, they say serviceberry, for the many ways it's used, though I only see the birds at them and the looks I get when I pick from the pharmacy's landscaping. The tenor of care, while the gig is to fix people's spelling errors, to engender future correction, a further cleaving of human from home. A shipping scene at Selkirk, Manitoba, shore of the red lined with lumber. Asphalt pathologies, the myth of unlimited growth, turf hut to wood cabin to brick farmhouse. TB in the prisons and the schools, structural with an iron ear as trauma turns to chemistry, is inherited. Receive, stitch, yours, how these move the pencil, an urge to render each visible invisible, while a deeper urge says leave it be. Shortcuts through drywall neighborhoods that won't make any map. Rudimentary graffiti, first swear words on a stained fence. The rivers commercial highways, and the rails commercial highways, and the roads commercial highways. What the verges return to untended. Aspens thick together, aspens sticky, aspens bright lime and rustling. White-tailed deer lifts head from alfalfa, aims satellite ears at 6 lanes of paved artery, humans each alone, dragging goods encased in them. HVAC drones of idling and revving and earth movers in a farmer's field, in a new interminable fog. Spring arrived again in winter, swallows feeding on what the machines kick up. Turkey vultures surveying the endless terrestrial renos from very high above, the broken arm maples smothered in vines, coniferous stands salted, browning, Tyvek threaded, the roadkill fledging in long wet grass, the mist thick in each depression. Bedroom windows higher than the sound barrier as they churn more ground to make an on-ramp, as they fill the hole with machines and grid up new rebar, a man pressed between grids working a sparking tool, belly of the earth exposed, outlet mall proliferating on his horizon, creek secreted feet below the road, half sheathed in concrete, given a hard, straight course. You could die of exposure in ways you couldn't before. Mechanics/Mohawk Institute, established 1828. Cavalic Hall, Marivel Cowessess School, ended 1997. Your proximity to these first and last. Dufferin, Simcoe, Dundas, King, Queen, Victoria, so I never know where I am and could be anywhere, and this is heritage. a kiska and beeswax, and an emptied egg. These grabbed back materials, held in worsening sunrise, hand unsteady, the motions familiar, the orange light, smell of wax bringing me closer, at risk of being lost again, wage earning like accelerant, my Toronto cough. Power poles, city blocks, grid layouts, irrigation systems, blasts that burn predictable circles, demo crews promising overnight completion, teetering commodity specs, new continents of waste, the sod over a landfill that makes a mountain range. Billboard nailed to the evangelical church, its parking lot like cooled lava. I do the math staring out a train window as we pass a woman on a defunct track, gazing through us to an instant of peace. Getting to know a river as a cure for loneliness, the river swollen and unapproachable after a season of record rainfall. Pigeon waltzes the trail on one foot and one little nub. Mallards and their escaped domestic kin and the bright rasping horns of Canada geese in false spring in glacier turquoise water. Hundreds and hundreds of sharps sinking into the banks. Nests of clothes, tents, tarps, broken trees helped down the slope with chainsaws. Water rainbow slicked, the salt spackled ground, the farmed transplants, the white breadcrumbs. Up the bank, courthouse, hockey arena, brutalist government tower, city museum, wind. Down here, the fork in the river, the sacred. Paint smudge. Shoe prints through a spill of yellow locust leaves. Overhead, the jagged edges of a different leaf, larger, still green. Forgetful of shape, pattern, name, English name or Latin name, all I do is look at them, passive as television, only reach out my hand when they're ailing or brightly hued. Cars on the overpass, a drum with no beat, just frequency, spraying detritus over the barricades, each stroke presumed individual. The freeway held above the neighborhood like a trophy. Small yellow leaves swarming in side road gusts. Vegetable gardens beside a church, fences around the dyed back, landscape fabric and stained mulch, the grass saturated, the grass torn away along the artery, dandelion, clover, marigold reflowering in approaching frost. The slough we pass on the way to the liquor store. A juniper gray with berries flashing with wax wings. A rush of wind through squat maple as the temperature drops swiftly. All the while, engines along the raised vein. Walking the sidewalks of an old suburb I do not know, Googling how to make pisan kedai out of all these black walnuts. Sidewalks on one side of the street, a childhood jack-o'-lantern neighborhood, the clouds frightening and rapid, low and sudden, tall branches whipping, cars profuse along the thoroughfare, a drone that forms in the south maybe, the on-ramps, how the ear must have it start somewhere, behind structures of cinder block, behind exploding scarlet Virginia creeper, exploding terrier on a rope in a yard, no beginning or ceasing, the wildness right up to the wall with its shitty graffiti and holes cut for fire hoses at points blanked out by the flashing sides of trucks. The angles of the roofs, the rain barrels, flower beds, fertilizer spreaders. These versions of where I come from. Knowledge of home in danger of becoming academic. An empty can of energy drink under a sugar maple. A black squirrel crossing critical thresholds, road wall, green strip, chain link, trail, wooden fence, property. Ubiquity of Tim's cups, buckthorn, creeper, confetti of locust leaves reanimated by SUVs through the subdivision. The bright yellow mush trails to nothing as the rain picks up again, falls sideways. Oh, thank you all.
Thanks, Laurie. That was really beautiful and really impactful. I wanted to start, if it's okay with you, to ask a question about form here.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean this entire collection is a long poem, it seems to me, and it sort of it's, you know, it varies from, you know, couplets to single lines to entire blocks of text. It's very sort of it's sort of diverse that way in terms of form. And it was interesting to me, like, that you said it was like this stream of information in a way, not unlike, say, like a Twitter feed or like a kind of, you know, scrolling. And so yeah, so kind of like so apt for this particular moment, I think. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that sort of relationship between form and content here, like how like this feels like this poem is pulling so much into it, like it's, you know. And so yeah, if you could speak to that, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. The form of this it happened in a way that has not happened for me before. So the form was a little bit inevitable. I found myself quite literally on trips between cities in Ontario, and just kind of noticing things and writing things down in 3-line chunks, and not really knowing what I was doing, of course, at the time. You just are kind of just following your nose and writing down what you're seeing, and coming to understand that as kind of the rhythm of where I was in the first place. You just kind of pass by something and then it's gone, or you know, just, so I was in a way kind of trying to reenact that, and to also have it. I was really hoping it could amount to a sort of a larger thesis if I put all these things side by side. So I turned to that form at, as I mentioned, like numerous points in the book, but felt the need for interludes. There were other points where the poems would come out in sort of a larger sort of soliloquy in a way, you know, just they would form into a bigger thing. So I was interrupting that view out the window, that Twitter feed, with
the doom scroll.
yeah, there you go. That's the alternate title of this book, perhaps. I don't know.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not?
No.
Yeah.
It's magnificent work, and it makes me think too of like the importance of witness, but it's also sort of like it's testimony too. So it's both, you know, both witness and testimony. And so, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but could you speak to like the kind of mourning that your book is doing? Like, it seems like it's a very inconsolable sort of situation. And so, like, what is the like political import of that sort of inconsolable mourning of like staying in that place of yeah,
the political import of it? It's it starts out rather unrelenting, as you mentioned, for the first half of the book. It's inventory taking of the mass destruction that is just kind of everywhere you look when you start really seeing it. For me, the turn in the book occurs when you do a similar sort of looking, but are kind of opening the lid off that looking in a way. Something that Jan Zwicky wrote about how, you know, it's not all leaving. Beauty will still be there. You know, things are still, so that it was that turn that really it occurs at a point in the book when the focus broadens, I guess. And so it's the poem is really trying to really truly inventory like everything that's wrong, and just to look at it, which is I too had a hard time really kind of looking at this work and this book for extended periods of time. It's not an easy book to read, and it wasn't easy to write, but it's as a way through to understanding the purpose of that kind of grief, and understanding how you can like turn your focus to the things that actually still need attending to. Humans, as Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about, the humans' unique capacity in this world is their ability to give thanks. It's their capacity for gratitude.
Lovely.
Yeah. So it was I think I was trying to do a little bit of that, trying to learn from that as much as I could. How about, can I ask you the same question about your work? Because there is a sort of, there is a testimony, an inventory, similar sort of inventory taking in your book, and a similar sort of grief and mourning. And I wonder how you were thinking of it as you were writing, and where you thought it was going to take you, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this sort of comes after the fact, same kind of process as you, Laurie, just sort of follow my nose, right? And so my parents had left agriculture in the late 90s, but then after years of sort of moving between jobs and cities, decided to return to farming just because it was such a vocation for them. But when we were at the second farm, there was this sort of recognition, but with difference, because farming had changed so significantly, much larger tracts of land, much more sort of, chemical intervention like that and that kind of thing. And so at the time that they did that, I started taking note of these abandoned farm sites on every section of land. You've seen them, Laurie, as you've rolled through the province. And and it was kind of amazing to me what people would leave behind. And so wanting to kind of catalog that, or having this impulse to do that. And so then those fragments, I guess, kind of built up into something that became the center of the book. And it occurred to me that I was enacting a kind of mourning, or, like that it was not unlike meditating on death, or like, and so what is the purpose of that? And thinking that maybe now retrospectively sort of thinking like about the ways in which mourning makes us aware of the lives of others. And so it returns us to our own vulnerabilities, and simultaneously makes us aware of our, collective responsibility in this place. And so I think that's sort of how I would think of it now. And I mean, and like you, like these were tough poems to write at times. And I think of your line actually in that fabulous piece about the refinery outside of St. Albert, which is something to behold. Like those who've not seen, it's like out of Star Wars or something. And I don't want to write it. I know seen as home. That struck me as such a true line. The oil refineries rising from poplars overlooking the river. Like, it's it was I guess I wanted to flip the table and ask you another question, if that's okay. So how do you find then, like, sort of as an important subsequent gesture, to take note of the beauty in a deliberate way? Like, was that a deliberate gesture, or a kind of self-saving sort of thing, or is there more to it than that? Like,
Funnily enough, the last pages of this book I wound up writing first. So it was kind of an inevitable gesture. It just was my knee-jerk first. These were the first things I was writing after I finished my previous book, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, why am I writing odes to the horse whose ribs I can see? Like, why am I writing odes to the wild grape and buckthorn and things? So that was it was kind of an inevitable, or just the thing that I turned to first. and I don't know what that's about, but it kind of, I guess I do. It kind of got me to really think of this book in a circular way. You know, it starts in a place that's very bleak, cataloging ecocide, basically, but it's the process of recognizing beauty and then seeing the destruction, recognizing the beauty. It's a thing that happens essentially kind of all at once, but it's a repeating process for me. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question at all.
No, it totally, it really does. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe are there questions from the crowd, or is there? Yeah.
Let's see if there's anything. In the meantime, though, Sheri, I was
Sure.
really curious. I've got kind of a silly question for you.
Oh yeah, I love those.
One thing in your book, one thing I noted in your book is that the names of people figure into it enormously. Like it's an actual catalog. I think of like the town history, those books that you find in the libraries. You're kind of doing something similar in a way, just cataloging the names of the people that were in the area. There it is.
I have one of them right here.
There it is.
And you can see how dog-eared it is.
Yeah, and I can reach around this screen here and pull one out too. It's like right there.
Yeah, no, there's such rich repositories of like detail. I remember Connie Galt saying at a reading once that these were her this was her wealth of research when she was writing her novel on beauty. And but no, so the names are some names have been changed, but most have not. Yeah, if that's right. I
was curious about that. If that was something that you were talking to people about, if
said person has been dead for longer than 75 years, I felt like it's okay to use their name. But the poems that trace my maternal ancestors, those are their names, and it's in asserting their presence in a place that that brutalized their lives in many respects, and so wanting to those are poems of honor, I think, in many regards, and so that's kind of the impulse there. But also wanting to kind of catalog these sort of really marginal lives out here, and also, Laurie, to name the names, it seemed like a significant gesture or important to me somehow. But it's kind of I don't know. And place names felt important too.
Certainly they have such, as we know, they carry such energy. Just to name a person.
Yeah, and the way things were like named and renamed out here has this sort of historical weight of legacy on it as well. And so it's just the name can track that so well. But
that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess shall we turn to others? Any questions from anyone? Or shall we just keep going?
I think you should keep going. I think everyone is stunned by the brilliance of both your words and the conversation, and so far there are no questions, so I think you guys should just keep going.
Liz says stunned.
Yeah. And I like what Danielle Janess wrote too, is exactly how I feel about this, which is, just the energy of this, a sweeping rush. I thought that was a really nice comment. So we're all speechless, so just keep talking for 10 more minutes. Okay. I'm going away again.
Please keep going.
I'll come back towards the end to just keep talking to each other. I think we're all very happy to hear.
Okay. So I was recently reading a Barry Lopez essay in which he talks about how it's really important to him to cultivate a storied relationship to place. So to kind of unpack or acknowledge places' many significant layers, right?
Right.
So and kind of companion to that, I was thinking about like Tim Lilburn's discussion of how settler culture almost just feels like it's hovering here, like it's he has this kind of vision of like Regina just kind of being on stilts or something. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just in the and so yeah, so I wonder how you see your work kind of in relationship to this idea of generating a storied relationship to place, if that makes sense.
Right.
That, yeah.
Right. A lot of what this book is about is exactly that hovering, that separation from a place and its stories and the names, and you know, it's articulating the lack that I have. In a way, this is kind of an Ontario book where I'm really kind of, or Southern Ontario book, I should say, digging into the place and the ways that it has been kept from people, really, in a lot of ways. The image that recurs in my own head in relation to this book is just how many times you drive over a creek or a river and there's bollards up to the exact point where you couldn't possibly see it as you're driving past. Like it's kind of that holding away. So the book is articulating a failure in a lot of ways, like a failure to connect, and trying to start that process of getting to know the place's stories. It's right at the very like first moments of digging into a place that I've been here for a fair number of years now, but still feel so new to. I'm similarly trying to unlearn that hovering motion that I was so raised in, you know. Yeah. And how about you with field reclaim?
Well, I was, yeah. I mean, while I was doing research or just, you know, kind of doing that thing of following my nose, yeah, I kind of uncovered like something like that was so strange to me. Like the farm that I grew up on was on Carleton Trail, which connected Winnipeg to Edmonton in the 1800s. It was a mainland transportation route, and Middleton's army would have marched, you know, from Carleton, like down Carleton Trail on their way to the Métis uprising, the resistance, and so this would have happened right across lands that we farmed, right? Like there would have, you know, like thousands of militiamen, you know, would have, and they dug rifle pits and they camped outside of a town nearby that I grew up. And this was all completely, like when I was growing up, not something that was not even acknowledged, but probably not even known, right? Like, or if it was known, it was this deliberate attempt at forgetting or something. And and it just struck me when I sort of started to imagine that you know, this pasture, for example, that I knew as August Falls pasture was actually where, you know, Denison's army dug in like a fortified encampment. And it's so and it seems like such a gap, like it seems like such a tremendous gap to have not known that. And so yeah, I wonder like what that looks like in residency here, with that, like knowing this now, and what does it look like down the line when these stories are more readily available or shared or acknowledged? Like, does it change our relationship to this place? You know, like these are all questions that I have kind of, you know, percolating. And does it lead to a more ethical kind of relationship to the land and land use out here? I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's but certainly that gap or that ignorance is a major, you know, issue. And so
I think we're both trying to chip away at it in various ways. That seems like a project, certainly.
Yeah, I like that, chip away.
Yeah, very cool. Instead of corners.
Yeah, exactly.
Scratching away. I sense questions.
Yes, a rush of questions at the end, so we probably won't get to all of them, but I want to chip away at some of the questions too, so excellent. I'm going to communicate some of them. Bruce Rice asks, the photographer Robert Adams said he wanted his work to be more than an elegy to what's already gone. He wonders if either of you would like to talk about that and the place of beauty in your own work. He continues, even in our poems, I sometimes think we've forgotten how to describe these things without a sense of shame.
To take just one part of that really big question. Hi, Bruce. I think beauty for me was the way in to understanding the scope of the relationship required to live as a ethical human being on this continent. That to me is like the one conduit that I think leads to something deeper and something better. The quote from Adams, want your work to be something more than elegy. Like I do too, but I know that I sit very much in elegy. like I have to take the time there as well. Yeah, Sheri.
Oh, well, I was just reading an essay today about how in the aftermath of World War II, the task of elegy became to remain inconsolable, like to not salve grief with consolation. And that Virginia Woolf, I can't remember the quote, of course, but like something about how in the aftermath of man-made manufactured death, you have to refuse the impulse to parachute out of elegy. And so I think given the man-made manufactured the death that we're experiencing right now in during a mass extinction event, I think like cleaving to the elegy is maybe an important gesture, like it's at least an idea I'm working out, I think. But yeah,
and it's kind of almost an inevitable gesture as human beings. We have to pay those respects. It's just kind of
well, it's like Bill McKibben points out in an essay, like that we're living through something that human civilization has never effaced before, right? Like it's right. And so like what is art in the face of that? Like what can art do in the face of that? And so which is like a really orienting question to try to think through. But
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Right, there's maybe one or two more questions that we can fit in. Another one is from Anonymous, and it says, they're curious about the long poem form that you both employed and instinctively drew on to articulate a long look at these landscapes. And would either or both of you like to speak about that impulse towards the long form poem?
Well, for me, it happens somewhat accidentally. Always, I try to put titles at the tops of these groups of words.
Titles are very, very hard.
But they're the hardest, so I just take them away. I have to. I do a little bit of guess and test when I'm putting together something large, and thinking that perhaps I'm making discrete things, realizing that I'm actually just writing I'm writing towards the same large thing. So it's I'm doing this action because it's kind of like that. It's kind of like just forming everything together, like mounding it into a shape, more or less. So I go quite by feel when it comes to a big form, a longer poem such as this, definitely.
Yeah, a lot of this is intuitive, I think, for me as well. I think that I like in thinking about Fast Commute, like it's so capacious. Like I couldn't imagine it in any other form in terms of what you're all wrapping into it. And so I think there's something about the way that it brings so many discrete yet connected details together to sort of show and render this landscape for the reader. You can see how form and content are intertwined, like it's
Oh, good.
Or how her form is like it works. Well done. Bravo.
Yeah. How do long poems happen for you, Sheri?
Uh, I think when the question is bigger than like the page, right? I think is basically So and it's much the same, Laurie. Like if it's returning to a similar theme, and to have it as a discrete poem feels artificial. So just get rid of the title. And so so very much the same process, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Good to hear.
Mhm. And there's one question that I think I hope will work as a concluding question, and I think is following the same line as questions that are larger than pages. And that's from Don Young, saying how Sheri, your use of the word doxology is interesting. It means, and this is a question, in praise of God, right? Hallelujah. But both readings feel that God has looked away, is absent from earth. Question being, as the landscape becomes despoiled and toxic, where is God?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I think Field Requiem, like, it takes that language and plants it on earth here, I think. And so it takes the language of the Latin liturgy of the Requiem Mass, to have a Requiem Mass for, for the despoiling, like for what we've done, what Agribiz has done, and what we've complicitly participated in. And there's many places in the New Testament and the Bible where there's a lot of lamenting about, where is God? And that answer is not readily, available. And I think it connects to this notion of elegy and insisting upon dwelling inside the elegy, given all that we stand to lose, So yeah. I don't know, Laurie.
Yeah. Where's God ain't there, man. No, in certain ways, like the God capital G is with the colonizer, is in my book. Like that's where I see it in a lot of ways. And so there's something different. There's this, maybe the spirit of the more than human world, or there's the coming to understand the need to pay an equal respect to land and water and air and plants and animals, and that's kind of the crux of the book. There's these two kind of competing ideologies at work a lot in the book, the way I understand it anyways.
Well, there's a comment that says, God is in the souls of the poets who bear witness and write the elegies. So that's lovely. That's a lovely concluding thought. Thank you so much to you both. I think we can, hard to end it all. I think we could all, hear you both go on for much more time, but we'll try to conclude. We chipped away a little bit. Yeah. Really enjoyed both of your readings so much. Do you guys have any final words?
Other than thank you, Claire, and thank you, Laurie. I really appreciate this. I loved hearing your work, Laurie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sheri. I was so happy to have you read alongside this book. It was really wonderful. Thank you all for being here too.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. And copies available at Type, I just put in, and same for Laurie's book. I don't have them in hand yet. I think we're getting them in a few days, but they're going to be here. And I appreciate you both so much. And thank you for everyone for coming. This was a really warm chat vibe, and I'm really grateful. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Good evening.